You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing, your afternoon fix of all the latest political news, debate and analysis. I'm Arlene Foster and here's what's coming up over the next hour. With the nation this week celebrating 70 years since Her Majesty the Queen ascended to the throne, we'll delve into Jubilee pageantry with the man behind it all, Bruno Peake. And I'm joined also by a royal expert to discuss the 7 decades of the Queen's reign. And how are you celebrating the Jubilee? I'm joined by Conservative MP Dr Caroline Johnson about how she and her constituents have been commemorating the event locally. Plus, she will share with us the special moment when she met the Queen. Who is making sure, of course, that the Queen and country are safe as well throughout the celebration? I'm joined by the former head of counter-terrorism about security during this week's events. And all 4 nations of the United Kingdom are marking this historic event. I'll be joined in the studio by a Conservative MSP to discuss how the nation has united under the Crown in celebration, and indeed those who have not. But amongst all of the rejoicing, the nationwide activities have caused some disruption to common travel routes. We'll speak to travel expert and good friend Simon Calder about all of that. But as ever, we want to hear from you. Please send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. But first, here's your latest news with Olivia.
Thank you, Arlene. It's 1 minute past 3. Here's the latest in the GB newsroom. The Archbishop of York has thanked the Queen for staying the course during a service at St Paul's Cathedral. Members of the royal family, including Prince Charles and Camilla, were joined by dignitaries to honour the Queen and her 70-year reign. Prince William and Kate were also there, along with Prince Harry and Meghan, who appeared with the Windsors for the first time since moving to America. Her Majesty, though, missed the event after experiencing some discomfort yesterday and watched the service instead on television from Windsor Castle. The Archbishop said the Queen was missed.
Your Majesty, we are sorry that you're not here with us this morning, but we are so glad that you are still in the saddle, and we are glad that there is still more to come.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister received a mixed reception on his arrival. Boris Johnson was cheered and jeered by the crowds as he approached St Paul's Cathedral with his wife Carrie. It follows a turbulent time for the Prime Minister, who's facing calls to quit after Sue Gray's report into lockdown breaches at Downing Street. This onlooker explained why he booed.
I did this because I think the man has only been lying to the British public for the last 5 years, and him being here when we're remembering our Queen is inappropriate.
Well, our royal reporter Cameron Walker is at Buckingham Palace. Cameron, what else can we expect from the weekend ahead?
Well, following that service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral, we have 2 further days of Platinum Jubilee celebrations, starting off with the Epsom Derby. That's happening tomorrow on Saturday, the horse racing, but none of the Queen's horses are going to be racing. The last one pulled out just a couple of days ago. And then tomorrow night, here at Buckingham Palace, we have a magnificent concert party at the Palace. A crowd of 22,000 people are expected, and Queen are going to be performing with Adam Lambert, and we heard them rehearsing a little bit earlier, and they sound very spectacular indeed. And then on the Sunday, we have a magnificent Jubilee pageant taking place in central London, representing Her Majesty the Queen's 70 years of service to the nation. It will go from Westminster Abbey down Whitehall, up the Mall, back here to Buckingham Palace. And also there are lots of Jubilee lunches taking place right across the country and here on GBNews.
A jam-packed schedule. Cameron, thank you very much. Well, leaders around the world have sent their best wishes to the Queen for the special occasion. Among them is North Korea's Kim Jong-un. In a message from Pyongyang, the reclusive leader extended his congratulations to Her Majesty and the British people for her 70 years on the throne. In other news, UK intelligence shows Russia now controls more than 90% of Luhansk in eastern Ukraine. On the 100th day of the war, the Ministry of Defence is warning Moscow could have complete control of the region in the next 2 weeks. After abandoning its assault on the capital, Kyiv, Russian forces are now focusing on the east and south of the country. Officials in Luhansk say the number of weapons provided by the West are still not enough. The US president is urging Congress to ban assault weapons and expand background checks in the wake of another mass shooting. 4 people, including 2 doctors, were killed when a gunman opened fire at a hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma yesterday. Last week, a teenager shot dead 19 children and 2 teachers at a school in Uvalde, Texas. And during a racially motivated attack, 10 people were killed in Buffalo, in New York. And the illustrator behind best-selling book The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse is selling some of his drawings. Sotheby's is auctioning 28 original Charlie Mackesy sketches. The ink and watercolour creations include 2 which didn't make the final cut for the book. The artist says it's a massive privilege to have his work shown by the auction house as part of a series of Jubilee exhibitions. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Arlene.
Welcome back, and it's good to be with you on this very special weekend. So the lighting of beacons has become a big tradition to mark royal events for centuries. And last night, more than 3,500 beacons were lit for the first time right around the Commonwealth to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The Queen began the ceremony by touching a globe representing the Commonwealth nations, and the Queen's pageant masters for the beacons, Bruno Peake, was standing next to her. His role, in addition to seeing all of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations and the beacon associated with them, was to coordinate that beacon lighting ceremony with Her Majesty. And I'm really, really pleased to say that Bruno joins me in the studio now. My goodness, what an evening for you, Bruno.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. And the credit for the whole thing really must go to all those 3,500 people who organised their beacons across the whole of the Commonwealth. Because it was totally unique. You know, when I said basically agreed with the palace to do it, I said we'll go for 1,500, and as you know, they started coming in over the last 18 months. I kept updating Buckingham Palace with the numbers, and when the Queen was told last night, just before I officially met her, you could just see the shine of light in her face, and she was so pleased and just kept saying, even more, even more.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And I watched it I was at the Enniskillen Beacon lighting last night, and of course that's the most westerly one in the United Kingdom. But I watched, when I came home, the Windsor one, and it was so special, Bruno, to see the way in which she took. And you're going to tell us a little bit about the detail behind all of that now. I thought it was really, really special.
Yeah, and I've got to say, and I said this to you a little bit earlier, that I've always said to people, if I wasn't going to be in London, I would want to be in Enniskillen. Because I know Selwyn Johnson, who's been involved in the other previous Jubilees when I've done them in relation to the Queen's celebrations. He's always pulled the stops out, and he really did pull the stops out on this one, because he had over 100 pipers playing that wonderful tune, Du Regnier, that we had specially written for the occasion. We had 1,500 pipers playing this all around the country, all around the world. We even had pipers in America, Germany, France, all wanting to get involved. So, yeah, it was a really fabulous night.
So tell us a little bit about that. We saw that at the beginning there, this little globe that the Queen pressed then to set off all of the beacons around the world.
Again, I wanted to do something completely unique. And so I came up with the idea of producing a globe. And on the globe, it would only have the countries of the Commonwealth on it, to represent Her Majesty being the head of the Commonwealth for 70 years. And on the top of the globe was the UK, and that was made of platinum to represent the Platinum Jubilee. The crown was made of silver to represent the Silver Jubilee. And in the crown, you had diamonds to represent the Diamond Jubilee.
Lovely.
And then the cushion represented the cushion that carries the state crown. And also around the base of the crown, we had 4 young ladies climb to the top of the 4 highest peaks to collect stones so that they could be put into the crown to represent the 4 nations of the UK coming together to celebrate this extraordinary lady.
I just think it's amazing to hear the detail that goes into something like that. When you see the globe being brought across, you just think, oh, well, it's a globe. But so much thought went into it.
It was really nice when it first, you know, when I saw it firstly made, it just looked wonderful. And we took it to the Tower of London on the 14th of April, and it went into the White Tower for safekeeping until it was used yesterday. And the idea was that so many, you know, members of the public could actually see it. So I think they had about 6,000 or 7,000 people, at least, went into the White Tower and viewed it, because it was put in a lovely case, and with all the, you know, the lights, the diamonds would twinkle, and no, it was a beautiful piece of work. British craftsman as well.
Oh, of course, of course. And I mean, you said to me earlier on when we were speaking about this, Bruno, that you very much wanted the 4 nations of the UK to be represented in that globe, as well as the Commonwealth, of course, which is very important. And you achieved that, and I think that was just beautiful. So tell me, you were beside Her Majesty last night, and we're all dying to know, how is she? Is she in good form? She certainly looked in good form yesterday.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nice thing was, as I said, when Sir Edward Young said, look, this is Bruno, she said, I said to her, so nice to see you again, Your Majesty. Can I escort you to the globe? And then Sir Edward said, look, we're over 3,500 now. And she looked at me with that lovely glint in her eye and said, well, even more? Even more? Because she must have been told about the build-up.
She's always so well briefed, as you know, Bruno, always so well briefed.
So, yeah, and as we walked, you know, we just talked. And, you know, when it came to Gregory Porter singing that lovely song, because what we did, we had an organisation called Commonwealth Resounds. They organised a Commonwealth competition for a special song to be sung as the beacons were lit. They sung it in Enniskillen as well, didn't they?
We had the choir singing it. It was beautiful.
And then we had Gregory Porter approach us to say, look, I'd love to sing that song. You know, so again, it was something really special that, you know, could be done for Her Majesty the Queen that night.
And Bruno, you've been doing this for a while now. You've had the diamond, you've had the golden before that. What was special about last night?
Oh, I hate to say it's the last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and Sorry, I'm getting...
I know. I know none of us like to think about these things, but it has been such a joyous occasion, I think, as well. And when I looked at the balcony yesterday and I seen Her Majesty speaking to her little great-grandson, Louis.
Oh, wonderful.
It was just wonderful. And I mean, the continuity of the monarchy is there. Wonderful. We all so much love Her Majesty, and we want it to go on forever and ever, don't we? Absolutely,
because she's been a beacon of light and hope, not just for this nation and the Commonwealth, but I think around the world too, because, you know, she's always had that continuity of individuality. Yeah. She's always, you know, led from the front. I've always found her very, quite humble, actually. Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I would say that this, wouldn't I? But I think that's probably her Christian faith coming to the fore. She's got great
always.
Great
and I always think she strikes me as someone who tries to take the Christian view of everything, even, you know, in especially probably in difficult times.
Absolutely.
Especially in difficult times. Well, Bruno, it's been a real joy to have you here today. Thank you so much for bringing us all of that information. It really is very special. So how are you celebrating your Jubilee? What are your memories of the Queen? Well, a survey in 2018 by YouGov showed that a third of the people in the UK had seen or met the Queen. That moment is not easily forgettable to people, and Conservative MP Caroline Johnson shared in the House of Commons the moment that she met the Queen. Oh, she's going to join me. Oh, right, I thought we were going to see Caroline there in the House of Commons, but we actually have Caroline with us, which is even better. Caroline is the MP for Sleaford and North Hykeham. Caroline, sorry, I thought we were going to see you in the House of Commons, but even better to speak to you in person. Tell us about that moment when you met Her Majesty the Queen.
Well, I'd love to. I think, as you said, everyone remembers if they're lucky enough to have met the Queen. It's a very special, magical moment in memory for them. So when I met the Queen, I was 17. I was at school, and Her Majesty came to visit the school. I remember the preparations. Like many of the people in my constituency, I made sure that they made sure that everything was very nice and pretty and clean, ready for the Queen coming. I remember them doing simple things like mowing the lawn, but also clearing out the gutters. I don't know if Her Majesty would have noticed, but they cleared the gutters, they repainted the white lines on the speed bumps, they made the place look lovely in advance of her coming. And then when she arrived, I was chosen to have lunch with the Queen and sit opposite her during lunch, which I felt was a huge privilege for me. I was a scholarship student at the school, so I felt particularly honoured to have been chosen to do that. And I remember worrying about it beforehand. You know, what would I say? What would we eat? What if they gave us something tricky like bolognese to eat? How would I manage? But I needn't have worried, as so many people have said over the last few days and weeks. The Queen is someone who has a huge talent at putting people from all walks of life at ease and making them feel very, very comfortable in their surroundings. And so we had a lovely chat over lunch. She talked about the many places that she had visited. At the time, I don't think I'd ever been on an aeroplane, and I'd been as far as sort of European countries on the ferry, but nowhere else. And she'd obviously extremely well travelled across the globe. But I remember thinking to myself, the way she travels around, it means that there are lots and lots of places she can visit, lots of things that she can do that I can't. But actually, there are also many places that I can visit and things that I can do that she can't, because of her needing to go through the red carpet treatment and not really necessarily see what's behind it. So it was a huge joy to meet Her Majesty and a huge privilege.
Well, I'm just wondering, Caroline, it was a huge honour for you, age 17, to sit opposite Her Majesty the Queen at her lunch. Was she someone who inspired you to get involved in public service, do you think? Is it something that will always stay with you when you're now a Member of Parliament?
It's certainly true. I think one of the things that the Queen does, perhaps because she's a woman, because she's a Queen, one looks and sees a woman being in such a powerful and important role and performing so well on the world stage. It gives a young girl, a young lady, the knowledge that girls can do anything, girls can be anything. You know, this lady is the Queen. I mean, she's the Queen of England, but she's the Queen of many other places as well, and other countries refer to her as the Queen, even if they don't have a Queen themselves. So I think she's an inspiration. And she said, and I may misquote her slightly because I don't have it in front of me, but she said something like, when she's 21, I will give my whole life in service. And that's exactly what she's done. And to spend 70 years on the throne, 70 years continually devoted to a country and to a nation and to its people, I think is a phenomenal achievement. And she's barely put a foot wrong. She's done so well over that period and was rightly loved by my constituents and people across the country.
She's very much loved and to me, very much a role model as well, as you can imagine, Caroline. But do tell us what's been going on in your constituency over the next, or what has been going on, but what's coming up in the next few days as well, because I'm sure we'll all like to hear that.
Oh, there's plenty going on in Sleaford and North Hike, and people are, in all the different villages, are desperate to celebrate and enjoy the bank holiday and celebrate Her Majesty and all that she's done. So there are a variety of activities, many street parties. There was the beacon lighting in various locations last night. And then there are some other more particular celebrations. So in North Skyle, they're producing a quilt. They've asked people to be thrifty and reuse materials in the production of their square that they're contributing to the Platinum Quilt. There is, in North Kyme, they have a scarecrow competition where they're having to dress the scarecrows up in a Jubilee theme. My children are participating in a cake baking competition this weekend, which means that I've had to buy half a shop's worth of Smarties to get enough red and blue ones, and they very much enjoyed dealing with the rest of them. And my kitchen will probably not recover from the experience, but they're up to that. And there are parties and fun going on around the constituency. I think this is something in which everybody is participating in some way or other, whether that be through organising or participating. I think it's a huge community experience, people bringing everyone together, the decoration, the buntings, it all looks fantastic.
Well, Caroline, thank you for joining me this afternoon. I had to judge a bakery competition and my goodness, that was quite a challenge. So I hope your children enjoy all of that. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.
So coming up next, as we celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, I will be joined by Phil Dampier. He's a royal editor to look back at the Queen's reign and into the future. What is the role of the monarchy? That's after a short break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
So welcome back to the briefing. Now, joining me in the studio to discuss more about the Queen's incredible 7 decades of service is royal author and commentator Phil Dampier. Well, Phil, it's been quite a jubilee so far. We had that appearance by Her Majesty twice yesterday. It was a great day yesterday, wasn't it?
It was a great day. First things first, many congratulations on your honour, Arlene. It's a jubilee that you're not going to forget, and I don't think the rest of us should either. And the reason being that we might not get another one for 40 years, would you believe? I mean, it's unlikely that Prince Charles will get it to his silver jubilee of 25 years, so the next jubilee will probably be William's at 25. It could be 40 years away. So
yes, because we don't celebrate 10 years or 20
I don't think
years.
So I'm certainly not going to see the next one, so I'm going to make the most of this one. We've been fantastically lucky with the weather. I mean, yesterday was brilliant. If you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago which events I thought the Queen would turn up to, I thought she'd probably come to the memorial, the Thanksgiving service today. She went to Prince Philip's memorial service, and also the Derby. And in fact, it's worked out the other way round. She appeared yesterday on the balcony, and I don't think she'll go to the Derby now because she hasn't got a runner in the Derby or another race that she had a horse in. And obviously wasn't up to going there this morning. So it was a shame she wasn't there this morning. But in some ways, the fact that she wasn't there was almost more sort of moving and poignant, the fact that everyone was paying tribute to her. I'm sure she was sitting at home watching it on TV with perhaps a favourite servant or whatever, and maybe a cup of tea. She doesn't drink anymore, gave up drinking last year, but I'm sure she was enjoying it on TV. I don't actually think we're going to see her again, but the fact that we were able to see her on the balcony, not just once but twice, with the working members of the Royals, and also, of course, lighting the beacon, I thought because that was on the first day, that really made the impact that we're looking for. You know, we've seen her, and it's all about her, but I don't think she's going to take a great deal more part. I don't think she's going to be around on Sunday for the pageants or the lunches or the... I don't think she'll be going to the rock concerts on Saturday night, but I'm sure she's absolutely loving every minute of it.
Yes, which is a pity because, I mean, one of my memories of the last Jubilee was actually Charles playing tribute to her. Do you remember that lovely...
Well, he always calls her Mummy, doesn't he? Mummy. Yes, and then, yes,
exactly.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we won't see that.
Really lovely, and yes, he will probably do a tribute, but she'll probably be in Windsor to watch.
Well, she's become so good on Zoom in the pandemic and so adept at it. Maybe they should beam her in. Something like that. You know, I mean, why not? You know, she seems to have adapted to that fantastically. But I don't think we'll see her again in the flesh. But she may wake up tomorrow morning and think, I fancy a day at the races. You never know. But I think it's the travelling back and forth. When I heard that she was going to go back to Windsor last night and then back to London today, I thought, that's too much.
Yeah. And let's talk about the balcony yesterday because it was a really lovely scene. There she was with her stick and looking down and making sure that she was inspecting all of the military, even though she was quite far away from them. And that lovely moment with her great-grandson Louis as well.
Yeah, little Louis seemed to be taking interest. He was finding the aircraft very noisy, wasn't he? And she was pointing things out to him. And it was fantastic to see her with the kids. And it's the first time we've seen Charlotte, Louis and George like that. So they're going to, grow up with this. You always sort of feel for them, don't you? At what age does it sort of dawn on them that, on George, that one day he's going to have to be king and stand on that balcony? So, it was great to see them and the other members of the family. But the Duke of Kent, he's about 87, isn't he now? And so he's been a stalwart. So we're getting to the stage where a lot of these older royals, are sort of in their... I mean, Anne's in her 70s, Charles and Camilla in her 70s. So there's going to be a lot on William and Kate and those youngsters in the years to come.
Although I have to say, I thought Anne and His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales were looking very well yesterday.
Well, sitting on a horse for an hour with a bearskin on in that heat, I mean, it's quite a task. I mean, obviously they're all experienced horse people, but I wouldn't fancy doing it.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the younger members of the family and when will it dawn on them that they are living in this royal family, I always think of those old pictures of Victoria's wider family and the fact that Her Majesty the Queen, of course, looking back at old pictures, will see her grandfather and what have you with Queen Victoria. It must be incredibly special to have all of these generations together now.
Well, we tend to forget that both the Queen and Prince Philip were great-grandchildren
Yes.
of Victoria. They're actually cousins. But she's, you know, this is the amazing historical thing about her, and she's the only person, really, who's united the country over the last 70 years. The only sort of thread. Everything else has changed, hasn't it? Be it prime ministers, be it politics. We've been in Europe, we've been out of Europe. She's the one constant, and that's why I think we're going to miss her terribly. She's going to be a very, very hard act to follow.
Yeah. 14 prime ministers, of
14
course.
prime ministers, 14 presidents. She met every president, I think, except LBJ. She even met Herbert Hoover, believe it or not, on a trip before previous president. Nobody else in the world has done this. Nobody else in America has met all these presidents. So that experience, you mentioned it earlier on, why get rid of all that experience? All the prime ministers always say that they always talk to her in private, and she's so, you know, so knowledgeable. Why get rid of that knowledge?
And of course, there are some people who have been talking about this. Of course, famously, the Republicans are saying "Make Elizabeth the last," which I find very offensive personally. But they do that. I mean, for me, it's about that golden thread, as you say, that continuity, the fact that the monarch is above party politics. If we had a president, they would inevitably be political. Is that not right?
Well, what's going to be fascinating now is to see how many countries decide to ditch the monarchy when she sadly goes. I mean, we're already getting rumblings in Australia from this new Prime Minister. I'm not so sure it's going to be as cut and dried as he thinks. I think if they have a referendum, Barbados ditched her recently, which I thought was very sad after all these years. I think they could have waited. But they didn't have a referendum. Who knows what the result would have been?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised at the Australian Prime Minister because we had been speaking to someone who knows Australian politics, and he had said he didn't think he would bother with that. But it's nearly one of his first
One of the first things he's
actions.
done, he sent out that message. But I think it's going to be much closer than he thinks. And I think a lot of people all around the world are envious. I mean, you saw that with all the tributes yesterday from US presidents, from Macron, even from the guy in North Korea.
Yes. Everybody wants a little bit of Queen Elizabeth.
We haven't heard from Vladimir Putin yet, but of course, you know, he was one of the people she had to have a state dinner for, so she's met them all. So, yeah, I think she's going to be an impossible act to follow. That's the only problem for Charles, but hopefully he'll be able to live off some of her reflected glory for some time.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's been fascinating. Thank you. And coming up next, I'm going to be joined by a former head of counter-terrorism about how we're being kept safe throughout all of the celebrations and travel disruption across our nation. Our favourite travel expert, Simon Calder, about hindrances caused by these national events. But first, here's Olivia with the news headlines.
Thank you, Arlene. It's 3:30. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Archbishop of York has thanked the Queen for staying the course during a service at St Paul's Cathedral. Members of the royal family, including Prince Charles and Camilla, were joined by dignitaries to honour the Queen and her 70-year reign. Prince William and Kate were also there, along with Prince Harry and Meghan, who appeared with the Windsors for the first time since moving to America. Her Majesty, though, missed the event after experiencing some discomfort yesterday, and she watched the service instead on television from Windsor Castle. The Archbishop said the Queen was missed.
Your Majesty, we are sorry that you're not here with us this morning, but we are so glad that you are still in the saddle, and we are glad that there is still more to come.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister received a mixed reception on his arrival to the service. Boris Johnson was booed and cheered by the crowds as he approached St Paul's Cathedral with his wife Carrie. It follows a turbulent time for the Prime Minister, who's facing calls to quit after Sue Gray's report into lockdown breaches at Downing Street. In other news, UK intelligence shows Russia now controls more than 90% of Luhansk in eastern Ukraine. On the 100th day of the war, the Ministry of Defence is warning Moscow could have complete control of the region in the next 2 weeks. After abandoning its assault on the capital, Kyiv, Russian forces are now focusing on the east and south of the country. At least 3 people have been killed in a train crash in southern Germany. 60 others have been injured, 16 severely, after a Munich-bound train came off the tracks near a ski resort. A major emergency services operation is still underway. The government has confirmed it wants to ditch what it's calling overbearing EU rules about imperial measurements. It's launched a consultation which may give traders more freedom to use pounds and ounces instead of kilos and grams when selling goods in future. TV, online and DAB plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Arlene.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
First, though, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.256 to the dollar. The pound is 1.169 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,484.49 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, the Jubilee celebrations across the nation have seen crowds partying and all forms of jollities taking place. Thousands of well-wishers lined the street of central London. People up and down the country have held well-attended street parties, and drinking establishments have been ever busier than usual. But how are our citizens and the royal family themselves being kept safe throughout the long weekend? Well, joining me now to discuss how Jubilee celebrators are being kept safe over the weekend is the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, Chris Phillips. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, it's a very busy weekend. Tell us, how do you get ready for something as large as this celebration?
Well, of course, it's a series of celebrations, and an enormous amount of planning goes into this from the policing perspective, from each individual event through to obviously the smaller events that are happening across the country. Police do work very closely, obviously, with the royal family, and there is a royalty protection team that does the work with them. But but you're right, it's an enormous amount of planning, and it's multifaceted. Really, what you're trying to do is to turn all these sites into island sites where you can actually protect a given site. But as we saw yesterday, there's always that point where the royals and everyone else is out on the street, and then, of course, it becomes much more difficult for the police to protect them.
And I suppose, Chris, it's really about having a balance between visible policing and then allowing everybody to enjoy themselves as well. It's about how do you get that balance right?
And that's always the key point, Arlene. It's a real conundrum. You know, you can have complete 100% security, but then you don't have an event effectively. But you also want, you want this thing to be as open as possible. So yes, a lot of work goes behind the scene. There are lots of police officers intermingled in the crowds, etc. And of course, there's lots of spotters trying to pick out people that might be acting suspiciously. And as we saw yesterday, you know, the officers that are actually lining the route, the last thing they need to be doing is looking at the route. They need to be looking at the crowd to pick up threats to those that are there.
And just speaking about officers, of course, they have to deal with large-scale events on many, many occasions. But do you think they get a special thrill from being involved in something like this? Because, of course, it is their monarch that they're protecting.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back to the royal wedding, Charles and Diana. That was my first big event that I policed, and it's an amazing occasion for the officers that are involved. And it's, you know, you want to be part of this, but also you have that feeling in the back of your mind that you might be the person that has to deal with someone with a gun, or, you know, these days even someone with a bomb. So it's an incredibly great event for police officers as well. But in the back of your mind, or in the front of your mind, actually, you've got to be looking for threats.
And I suppose thinking about always the worst case scenario. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the planning does. You work on worst case scenarios. What would happen if A, B or C? And then how would you react? And of course, these days, you need lots of police officers with firearms. You know, that wasn't quite the case previously, although there were firearms officers present. Nowadays, you know, you do have to work on the assumption that someone could be walking around with a bomb, or guns, or knives, etc. So you have to have the necessary response to be able to deal with that.
Well, Chris, I know you have somewhere else to go now, so we'll leave it there. But thank you so much for joining us. And can I just say how proud we were yesterday of our police officers in the way that they dealt with the little skirmish. I think it was very professionally done and didn't cause any problem at all for those of us who were watching at home. So we were very proud of them yesterday.
Yeah, we should be very pleased with our police force, really. I know they get such a hard time, but, you know, there's such a lot of work goes on behind the scenes, as you quite rightly say. And by the way, yeah, congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. So the Platinum Jubilee has been a unifying event. I very firmly believe that across all of the 4 nations of the United Kingdom. The people of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have come out in celebration. However, not everyone has been united under the crown. The Scottish Green Party staged a walkout prior to the Jubilee celebrations when they had a Hollywood debate in and around the Platinum Jubilee, as the SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon herself paid tribute to the monarch. So how have the 4 nations been commemorating the Jubilee? And what about those who refuse to honour Her Majesty's service? Very pleased to say joining me in the studio is the Conservative MSP and Shadow Secretary for Health and Social Care in Holyrood, Sandesh Gulhane. Sandesh, thank you so much for joining us. You're down in London, obviously enjoying the Jubilee celebrations. Have you had a good weekend so far?
Absolutely. It's fantastic to be down in London to enjoy what's going on. And one of the reasons that I've come down to London is because as an MSP for Glasgow, the City Council actually didn't put things on. They decided they didn't want to celebrate it. So actually I felt I want to come down.
And is it an SNP council? Am I right about that?
SNP and Greens have come in and that's what we're seeing. And actually what you just said there about Holyrood, it's quite childish, and it's not something that we want to see. You know, we're here to celebrate the monarch, to celebrate what achievement, 70 years of leading, 70 years of being that symbol. What a fantastic thing to do.
Well, of course, it's unique. And I have to say, I thought the Green MSPs even managed to make Sinn Féin look generous over the whole Jubilee celebration, because, of course, Michelle O'Neill, the Vice President of Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, actually wrote to the Queen to congratulate her on her 70 years of service.
I think what we need to be clear about, it doesn't really matter which way you stand when it comes to the monarchy, but you need to appreciate what the monarch has done. You need to appreciate the 70 years of dedicated service she's given. But I think what we should do is we just need to stop focusing upon the Greens and the SNP and people who don't like the monarch. And we should be celebrating being happy. And actually being here in London, you get to see that, and you get to see just the incredible way that the people have come out. I'm seeing bunting everywhere. I've never seen quite so much bunting in my life. And it's just everyone's happy, the sun's out, and we're all having a really good time.
But there are celebrations in Scotland, I think we should say that. I seen some celebrations in Inverness, I think it was, yesterday I was looking on. And indeed, we know that Her Majesty the Queen has a very special place for Scotland in her heart. Tell us about the relationship between the Queen and Scotland.
Well, Her Majesty loves Scotland. And actually, if you come up to visit, you'll see exactly why. It's a beautiful, friendly place with really nice people, you know, and just plug in Glasgow. Glasgow is the best city in Scotland. But it's the people that make it. And so what you'll see is when Her Majesty comes up to Scotland, she gets that freedom. She gets to enjoy the things that she wants to do, which is the...
And the huge space, of course, that you get in Scotland, which you don't get elsewhere.
No, absolutely. And it's green and just gorgeous. And when you come up, you really get that vibe. And there are real people who really like the monarchy in Scotland. Let's not forget that. Let's not let a few people put it down. There's a lot of people celebrating. A lot of people are very happy with what's going on.
Absolutely. And as I say, you've come down to London to have that celebration. But there are many celebrations going on in Scotland. I think we should say that many communities want to show their affection for the Queen and the royal family. I think that's very true as well, isn't it?
Well, it's very true. And I think you can see that when you're going round. I'm from Indian ethnic background, and you can see the temples there are promoting it. You can see mosques are happy with what's going on. It doesn't matter what faith you are. It doesn't matter what your background is. This is a unifying event. This is something we can all be proud of. I mean, the people who are flocking here from around the world to see what we're doing. And I don't think anyone puts on pomp and ceremony quite like we do.
Well, funny you should mention that. I noticed yesterday when I was at home in Fermanagh watching London and watching what was going on, there were so many people from other parts of the world on the mall, from America, from Canada, from all over the place, wanting to be here and wanting to celebrate Her Majesty the Queen. I thought that was incredible.
Oh, absolutely. And why not? Because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we're going to get. And they get to see the troops coming out. They get to see the horses. I was watching the flyover. What a fantastic thing, you know, to see those red arrows at the end doing the red, white and blue. It's just absolutely brilliant. And that's what we love to see. And that's what brings people here to see it. And most importantly, spend their money and boost our economy.
And I was going to ask you, what was your favourite part so far? Because we've had all the military pomp and ceremony with the trooping of the colour. We've had the fly past. We've had the religious ceremony today, which, of course, Her Majesty the Queen would have loved to have been at because she's a very faithful Christian person. And then we have the parties that are coming, the concert. What's your favourite bit?
Prince Louis, without doubt.
I think that's probably right, Sudesh. Yeah, I mean, he was incredible, wasn't he?
Oh, the faces and just what he was doing, and you could see just a mum behind him
Catherine
saying,
was crying.
Don't do that. But actually being a mum, and I can sympathise. My daughter does similar things like that.
Well, children will be children. It's not always the case. But tell me, you are the Shadow Health Secretary in Holyrood, and we know that there's huge pressures on the Scottish health system. Where do you see us finding a way through all of that, Sudesh?
Well, I think we need to be very clear that actually we don't have a very good plan in Scotland. Long COVID, let's talk about long COVID. And it's something that affects hundreds of thousands of people across the United Kingdom, but actually 151,000 Scots are suffering from it. You know, some people can't make it to their toilet. They're giving up their jobs. I know a doctor who's no longer working because she cannot talk on the phone for long enough, can't see patients. The SNP government spent £20 million on independence and have only allotted 10 million to long COVID. And if you just see that as an example, we're seeing our A&E in crisis. And it's quite simple. What we need to do to try and help is we need to embrace technology and we need to embrace the innovations that we've got. And there's lots of innovation out there. There's lots of good practice. We need to take that and we need to roll that out across Scotland, and we need to open up the NHS to people.
Well, tell me, it's very interesting you mentioned that £20 million for an independence referendum and preparing for that sort of thing. We also heard that there was a large hole in the taxes and the receipts that come into Scotland in terms of 350 million, isn't it? How is that going to be dealt with?
But it's a bit more than that. There's 3.5 billion that we're a bit concerned about. But you see, why should we be surprised? How much are we spending on ferries that aren't going to sail? 450 million?
Yeah.
We've got a census. They've put out a census which is probably going to be useless, and it's cost 150 million when we should have just put it out with the rest of the United Kingdom. We're seeing a huge amount of money being spent on a COVID app when the United Kingdom government were giving it for free, but Scotland had to be different. And it's just wasted money after wasted money. So are we really surprised that we're seeing such a big black hole in the deficit? And this is on top of the biggest block grant that we have ever received in Scotland.
Yeah.
It's just badly managed. And now you're beginning to see that in ScotRail. It's been nationalised. We don't have any trains. We're not able to get people back home. Businesses are suffering. And an example would be the last train home between Edinburgh and Glasgow is around 10. Well, that means that we can't go out and have a drink. We can't go and do things that businesses need us to do because we need to boost the economy. And we just can't do that because of the pure mismanagement of the SNP government.
Well, tell me, you're staying now down in London until the Jubilee celebrations are finished. What are you looking forward to the most now coming up?
Well, I'm quite looking forward to taking my kids out into Hyde Park.
Lovely.
I really want to go to the Princess Diana Memorial. We want to play. There's a good playground there. And actually, we've just come out of a playground around. And it's just taking the kids out and letting them see...
Making memories.
Absolutely. And seeing how happy everyone is and how united. And to show the Union flag being a flag of positivity.
Yeah.
That's something that we need to say. And I can't go without saying congratulations as well. I know everyone has, but richly deserved.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for coming into the studio when you're here in London with your family. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now, let's finish with something close to the Queen's heart. Former members of the Royal Yacht Britannia crew have returned to the ship in Leith to share their stories as part of the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. 65 of the yachties have returned to their normal duties on board to help restore the vessel, which of course is based in Edinburgh. Davy Donaldson reports.
All hands on deck as the Britannia undergoes some finishing touches. These people are all former crew members, giving up their time to help maintain the ship. Andy Fletcher is the secretary of the Association of Royal Yachtsmen.
We thought that as an association it would be nice to come and relive our memories, chat to some of the visitors and also give them a bit of a hand to do some of the jobs which the 17 guys who look after her now can't necessarily get done all the time. So it's a special thing once a year. We haven't been able to come up here since COVID, so we're 3 years late now. And especially for the platinum anniversary, this is just a really special week.
Many of the crew spent years aboard the ship, travelling around the world, looking after the royal family. One of them is Steward William French. He was even called by his nickname by the Duke of Edinburgh.
Oh, it's a huge honour to be on board the Britannia and to serve Her Majesty herself. That's what we all dream of in our life. And yes, I had that lucky opportunity and I took it in my stride, and it got better and better because the more they got to know you, you got called by your first name or my nickname at the time.
What was your nickname at the time?
Froggy. Yeah, Duke of Edinburgh often called me Froggy as he walked past.
That must have made your day.
Oh, yeah, you just take it in your stride and a little smile. And, you know, when you called, it was, Froggy, where are you? You know, or Froggy, what are you doing now?
This is where Froggy would have served food and drinks to the royal family. And upstairs in a different deck are the sleeping quarters, including the Queen's bedroom. While the royals and guests were enjoying themselves down in the engine room, the crew were hard at work. But engineer David Rushforth says it was always appreciated.
Things that impressed me was how thoughtful the royal family were for the crew of this ship, and they always made a point of thanking us before they departed, and that means a lot, doesn't it? They didn't have to do that.
Ben Bentley was a radio operator and remembers being invited to Windsor Castle when the yacht was 60 years old.
All come up to Windsor Castle into the Great Hall and have pre-dinner drinks. And then the family, the Queen, Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Charles, they all mingled round, talked to the whole ship's company that were there and the families.
The Royal Yacht Britannia was finally decommissioned in 1997, a move which saw the Queen shed a tear. But a replacement is planned, which could cost £250 million and could be in service in the next 3 or 4 years. While Britannia may not sail anymore, the ship clearly has a special place in Her Majesty's heart and holds memories of relaxing trips around the world with her family. Davy Donaldson, GB News.
That's Davy reporting there from Leith in Edinburgh. But amongst all of the joy and celebration to mark the Queen's 70 years on the throne, many across the nation have been inconvenienced by the disruption caused to popular travel routes, including trains, tubes and congestion. In addition to this, the trade union RMT have announced that they will meet on the 7th of June to discuss a timetable for strike action, potentially meaning nationwide disruption for those who rely on public transport. So what can we expect to see in the coming weeks with travel services, and how has the Jubilee weekend impacted our transport system? Well, joining me now to discuss this is travel expert and travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder. Simon, where are you and how did you get there?
I'm in beautiful Oslo in Norway. Arlene, it's a pleasure to talk to you from here. I managed to get here via Germany and then Denmark. And you can see it's a very, very busy airport today. Everybody in Norway seems to want to go on holiday. So it's taken a while to get through, but things at least are going okay here. If you look at Heathrow, well, there's 120 flights cancelled by British Airways in and out today. Gatwick Airport, they've got fewer cancellations on EasyJet, around about 30 or so, but those include very, very last minute cancellations. People flying to Madrid and Milan this morning, well, they didn't. They were told as they waited at the airport, your plane's not going. And then Manchester seems to be doing all right. That last weekend, you might recall, huge queues and terrible scenes for TUI passengers who were actually told you're not flying by police after they'd been at the airport for about 9 hours. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting weekend too, in terms of people coming back from the half-term holidays in England.
Yeah, Simon, indeed. And passengers, we're told, are being advised to just try and travel with cabin baggage. Do you think that will help the situation?
It certainly will in a couple of ways. First of all, it makes your life much, much easier as a passenger because you're obviously not queuing up to drop off your bag. There's less chance of it ending up in, I don't know, Los Angeles when you're going to Lagos because it gets misrouted. And of course, no waiting around at the other end. But it has a very important function as well, which is that it reduces the strain on the operation. So although a lot of people have said, this is outrageous, we can't possibly do that, it does make sense as long as you remember those liquid rules and those sharps rules so that you're not actually gumming things up with the security queue. And although, well, I'm just going to show you actually, here's my cabin baggage. That's what I'm allowed on my budget flight. But British Airways will allow you to take a 23 kilogram big bag and a 23 kilogram smaller bag onto the plane as cabin baggage. So if you can take advantage of it, I certainly would advise you to do so.
Simon, I wish we had longer to talk, but you're looking well and it's good to talk to you and hopefully see you in the studio very, very soon. So you've been watching the briefing with me on this wonderful Jubilee weekend. I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. Okay, enjoy it. Enjoy every moment of the Platinum Jubilee. And up next, it's Nana Quia.